In this example, we're going to convert an existing Kafka application that happens to use schema to connect to KSN using OAuth. We're going to separate this into two videos. In this video, I'm going to first show this working as it connects to a Kafka cluster, and then we're going to convert the produce and consume portion over to use OAuth. In the next video, we're going to take the schema connection and convert that over to use either JWT or OAuth. We're going to give you both options there. So first, let's take a look at this and show it working against a Kafka cluster. So here I am in the client properties.schema file, and edit your topic to show your student ID. And then in the Bootstrap servers, this is going to be your Kafka endpoint on a Kafka server. And then the SASL-JS config, here you're going to have your username and password. Let me go ahead and go to the Avro producer, and I'm going to go ahead and produce some messages. And while that's starting up, I'm going to scroll down here, and you can see here that we have a generic record of name order, and it has two fields. It has an item that's a string and a cost that's an integer. We're going to go ahead and produce 10 messages. And then I'm going to start up the consumer as well. So here's our 10 messages produced. And if I go over to my consumer, our goal is to then consume those 10 messages. So I'm going to go ahead and stop running that. We want to use our client.properties.schema file, and we want to convert that to use KSN, but instead of using a JWT token, we want to use OAuth. There's only a few different changes you're going to need to make. The first is that the SASL mechanism, we need to switch from plain over to OAuth bearer. So I'm going to comment out the plain and uncomment the OAuth bearer. We need to change our Bootstrap server to our KSN enabled Pulsar cluster. And then I'm going to comment out the SASL-JS config, and then we're going to uncomment this whole section here. So this is going to give us all of the information we need to connect to the OAuth bearer login module. It's going to connect to your endpoint. So if you're using our cluster that's hosted by us, this is already pre-populated for you with the OAuth issuer URL and the audience. Those are great. If you are testing this against your own cluster, you're going to have to edit those to be the issuer and audience of your cluster. And you're also going to need this OAuth credentials URL. That's where's that credential file that I've given you that's for OAuth2. Before I pop that in, we need to also uncomment this line to use the login callback handler. And this is a newer item, so I'm going to put some information in the comments after the video about what versions you're going to need to be able to use this, because we're using a custom OAuth handler plugin inside of Kafka. So as I mentioned, there's this OAuth credentials URL. I have a relative path here from source main resources. And then you're going to need to edit this to have your student number that you have, the JSON file that was provided to you for the class or the one that you created for your cluster, and then drop that into your resources folder. So here, as you can see, I've dropped that file into the resources folder. We're not quite ready yet to test out this file. If you're just using produce and consume and you need to convert your application to use OAuth, you should be ready. But for this particular application, I also need to convert over the connection to schema registry to either use JWT or OAuth, which we're going to do in the next video before we go ahead and test this file.